Hi Reddit, I'm Jake, 34M, and this is one of the hardest things I've ever had to write. I never thought I'd end up posting here, but life has a way of blindsiding you. My wife, Sarah, 32F, and I have been together for 8 years, married for 5. We have a beautiful home, 2 dogs, and what I thought was a rock-solid relationship until now. I need advice, clarity, and honestly, just someone to tell me I'm not crazy. Sarah and I met in college. She was the life of every party, the girl everyone noticed when she walked in. I was quieter, more introspective, but she saw something in me, and we clicked. Over the years, I built my life around her. We shared dreams of traveling, kids someday, and growing old together. I honestly thought we were happy, or at least I was. Lately, though, things haven't felt right. Sarah's always been outgoing, but she's been acting different. At first, it was little things. She started dressing up more, like full glam makeup and heels just to go to the grocery store. She used to leave her phone on the kitchen counter, but now she clutches it like it's glued to her hand. Calls from work started happening late at night. When I asked about them, she'd shrug and say, "Just office politics." I chalked it up to stress. She's in marketing, and her job can be demanding. But then came the lost wedding rings. Sarah claimed she misplaced them while cleaning the bathroom. She made a big show of searching every nook and cranny of the house. I even helped, tearing apart cushions and checking under furniture. But something felt off. Those rings were precious to her. Why would she take them off in the first place? When I asked, she snapped at me, saying I was being paranoid. "Do you think I'm lying or something?" she hissed. I let it go. I trusted her. Or at least, I wanted to. Then, 2 weeks ago, I found something that made my stomach churn. I borrowed her car because mine was at the shop. As I was reaching under the seat for my sunglasses, I found it, a used rubber. I froze. My mind immediately raced with a million explanations, none of them good. Sarah doesn't let anyone else drive her car. I sat there in her driver's seat, my hands shaking, trying to convince myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe it wasn't hers. Maybe someone left it there. But deep down, I knew. When I confronted Sarah that night, she laughed it off. Laughed. "Are you serious, Jake?" she said, rolling her eyes. "It's probably been there forever. You know how gross parking lots are. Someone must have dropped it in when the window was open." Her response didn't sit right with me, but what could I say? Without proof, I'd just sound like a jealous husband. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. That's when I decided to take action. If Sarah wasn't going to be honest, I'd find the truth myself. I hired a private investigator. Yeah, I know it sounds extreme, but I needed answers. The PI, a no-nonsense guy named Tom, assured me he'd get to the bottom of it. "These things happen more often than you'd think," he said. "Just be prepared for what I might find." Prepared? How could I ever be prepared for what was coming? In the meantime, I tried to act normal around Sarah, but it wasn't easy. Every smile, every kiss, every "I love you" felt fake. I started noticing more red flags, like how she'd leave the room to take calls or suddenly have late meetings that she never used to have. Once, she came home smelling like cologne that definitely wasn't mine. When I asked about it, she rolled her eyes and said, "God, Jake, do you have to question everything I do?" By now, my mind was a war zone. I wanted to believe her, but the evidence was stacking up. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. Was I imagining things? Overthinking? Or was my wife really betraying me? A week later, Tom called. "We need to meet," he said, his tone grave. My heart dropped. We met at a small diner off the highway. He slid a manila envelope across the table. "Jake, you might want to brace yourself." Inside were photos, dozens of them. Sarah, smiling and laughing, with another man. They were at a hotel, holding hands in the parking lot. In one photo, they were kissing in broad daylight. My stomach churned. I felt like I was going to vomit right there in the diner. "Who is he?" I croaked. "His name's Brian," Tom said. "Works at her office. They've been meeting up during lunch breaks, weekends, you name it." I couldn't breathe. My entire world was collapsing. How long had this been going on? How could she do this to me? I sat there, staring at the photos, as Tom explained more about their rendezvous. Apparently, Sarah had been getting bold, even inviting Brian over to our house when I was at work. The thought made my skin crawl. When I got home that night, Sarah was lounging on the couch, scrolling through Instagram like nothing had happened. I stood there, staring at her, wondering how she could be so heartless. But I didn't confront her, not yet. I needed to think, to plan. If she was going to betray me like this, she wasn't getting off easy. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the images in my head. Sarah with Brian, her carefree laugh, the way she looked at him like I didn't exist. By the time the sun came up, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to sit around and let her get away with this. She wanted to act like I was stupid? Fine. I'd show her just how smart I could be. That morning, I acted like nothing was wrong. Over coffee, Sarah casually mentioned she'd be working late again. I nodded, pretending to be engrossed in an email. Inside, I was screaming. Did she seriously think I'd buy her lies after everything I knew? When she left for work, I called Tom. Can you get me a full rundown of everything she's been doing with Brian? Times, places, everything. I already have it, he said. There's something you need to see. He emailed me more photos and a detailed timeline of her affair. It had been going on for 4 months. For months of lies, sneaking around, and disrespect. Worse, I saw pictures of Brian in my house, sitting on my couch, drinking my beer. My blood boiled. I decided it was time to confront her, but not before I had a plan. I wanted her to know that she couldn't manipulate me anymore, that her web of lies was about to unravel. I called a lawyer, someone ruthless who came highly recommended by a friend. Let's just say, Sarah was about to face a hurricane she wouldn't see coming. That evening, when Sarah walked through the door, I was waiting in the living room with a bottle of whiskey and the photos spread out on the coffee table. She froze the moment she saw them, her face draining of color. "What the hell is this?" she asked, her voice shaking. "You tell me," I said, my voice calm but cold. "Looks like you've been busy during all those late meetings." Sarah's eyes darted to the photos, then back to me. "Jake, it's not what it looks like. I can explain." "Explain? Oh, I'd love to hear this one," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Is Brian just your new work buddy? Or maybe you're doing a project together, at hotels, during your lunch breaks, and in my house." Her face twisted with anger. "You've been spying on me? That's insane, Jake. How dare you invade my privacy like this?" I couldn't believe her audacity. "Invade your privacy? Are you kidding me, Sarah? You brought another man into our home. Don't try to make me the bad guy here." She crossed her arms, her voice dripping with venom. "You're overreacting. Brian and I are just friends. Those photos don't prove anything." I laughed bitterly. "Friends? Do all your friends kiss you like that? Do you invite all your friends to hotels during your lunch breaks?" For a moment, she looked like she might cry, but then her expression hardened. "Fine. You want the truth? Yes, I've been seeing Brian. But can you blame me? You're so boring, Jake. All you do is work, and when you're home, you're just there." I needed excitement, something you could never give me. Her words hit me like a sledgehammer. I'd spent years trying to be a good husband, doing everything I could to support her dreams, and this was how she saw me. Boring? Just there? So this is my fault? I asked, my voice trembling with anger. "I gave you everything, Sarah. A home, love, support, everything. And you throw it all away because you're bored?" She shrugged, her face cold and unrepentant. "Maybe if you'd been paying more attention, this wouldn't have happened." That was it. Any lingering hope I had of saving our marriage evaporated in that moment. She didn't feel guilty. She didn't care about the pain she'd caused. All she cared about was herself. "You're unbelievable," I said, standing up. "You know what? You can have all the excitement you want with Brian. I'm done." I walked out of the house and drove to a friend's place, my mind racing. Sarah's cruelty, her blatant disrespect. It was more than I could handle, but I wasn't going to let her destroy me. If she wanted to play dirty, I could play dirty too. I sat in my car outside my friend Matt's house, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My chest was heaving with rage, but underneath it all, there was an overwhelming sense of loss. The woman I had loved for years, the woman I had built my life around, had become a stranger. Worse, she had become my enemy. Matt, 33M, was one of my closest friends, the kind of guy who always had your back no matter what. When I knocked on his door, he took one look at me and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked, stepping aside to let me in. I hesitated for a moment before blurting it all out. The lies, the affair, the photos, Sarah's cruel words. By the time I finished, Matt looked just as furious as I felt. "Dude, you can't let her get away with this," he said. "You need to take her down." That's when I told him about the lawyer I'd contacted. Her name was Amanda Reynolds, and she had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless in divorce cases. If Sarah thought she could walk all over me, Amanda was going to prove her wrong. The next day, I met with Amanda in her sleek downtown office. She was sharp, no nonsense, and exactly what I needed. "Here's the deal," she said, after I laid out everything. "We're going to hit her where it hurts. Infidelity isn't just morally wrong. It's legally advantageous for you in this state. With the evidence you've got, we can ensure she walks away with as little as possible." Hearing those words gave me a glimmer of hope. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had some control, but I wasn't done yet. If Sarah was going to humiliate me, I wanted her to feel a fraction of the pain she'd put me through. That's when I came up with my plan for revenge. A few nights later, I waited until Sarah was out, working late again. I called Matt and told him to meet me at the house. Together, we packed up all of Sarah's things. Her clothes, her shoes, her endless collection of skincare products, and dumped them in the garage. Then I changed the locks on the doors. By the time she got home, it was almost midnight. She tried the key, but of course it didn't work. I watched through the living room window as she banged on the door, her face contorted with frustration. "What the hell, Jake?" she yelled when I finally opened the door. "Why is my key not working?" "Because this isn't your home anymore," I said, my voice calm but icy. "Your stuff is in the garage. Take it and go." Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she looked genuinely shocked. "You can't do this. This is my house too." "Not anymore," I said, holding up the divorce papers Amanda had prepared. "You've been served." Sarah's expression morphed from shock to fury. "You're such a petty little man," she spat. "You think this is going to hurt me? I don't care, Jake. I've been miserable with you for years." I felt a pang of pain at her words, but I didn't let it show. "Then this should be a relief for both of us," I said, slamming the door in her face. The fallout was immediate. Sarah started texting and calling nonstop, alternating between rage and fake sweetness. One minute, she'd call me a loser and say I'd never find anyone better. The next, she'd apologize and claim she'd made a mistake. I ignored all of it. I didn't care what she had to say anymore. The only messages I responded to were about logistics, selling the house, dividing assets, and arranging for her to pick up the rest of her things. But Sarah wasn't done playing games. Sarah didn't go quietly. If anything, getting served divorce papers only seemed to fuel her anger. She started a smear campaign against me, telling her friends and even some of mine that I was a controlling, paranoid husband who had driven her into Brian's arms. It was infuriating, but I kept my cool. I knew the truth, and I had the evidence to back it up. But she didn't stop there. A few days later, I got a call from Matt. "Jake, I think you need to see this," he said. He sent me a screenshot of Sarah's latest social media post. It was a selfie of her and Brian, smiling like they didn't have a care in the world. The caption? "Sometimes you have to leave the wrong person to find the right one." I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. She was flaunting her betrayal like it was something to be proud of. And Brian? The smug grin on his face made me want to put my fist through a wall. I forwarded the post to Amanda. This might help your case, I wrote. Her reply came back almost instantly. Keep this coming. It's gold. Meanwhile, Sarah started getting more aggressive. She showed up at the house unannounced one evening, pounding on the door. I opened it just enough to see her standing there with tears in her eyes. "Jake, please," she said, her voice trembling. "Can we just talk? I don't want this to get ugly." I raised an eyebrow. "It's already ugly, Sarah. You made sure of that." She pushed past me into the house, her tone shifting from pleading to confrontational. "You're really going to throw everything away because I made one mistake? What's wrong with you?" "One mistake?" I shot back. "You've been sleeping with Brian for months, lying to my face, and bringing him into our house. That's not a mistake, Sarah. That's a deliberate choice." She rolled her eyes, crossing her arms. "Oh, stop being so dramatic. It's not like I killed someone. And honestly, you should be thanking me. At least I didn't waste any more of your boring life." I was stunned. How could someone be so unapologetic? So cruel? She wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry she got caught. "Get out," I said, my voice low and firm. "Take your things and go. I'm done talking to you." She glared at me, her eyes filled with hate. "Fine," she snapped. "But don't think you're going to come out of this looking like some kind of hero. Everyone's going to know who you really are." That night, I got a call from Tom, the PI. "Jake, there's something you need to know," he said. I kept digging, just in case there was more. Turns out, Brian isn't the only one. "What?" I said, my stomach dropping. "I followed Sarah the other night," Tom explained. "She wasn't with Brian. She was with another guy. Some tech bro type. They were all over each other at a bar downtown. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I'd suspected Sarah was capable of lying and cheating. But this? She wasn't just unfaithful. She was a serial cheater. "Get me everything," I said. "Photos, names, details. I want it all." The next morning, Amanda called me into her office. "Jake, this new information changes things," she said. "With multiple affairs, we can build a stronger case. You'll come out of this with the upper hand, and Sarah will lose any sympathy she's trying to gain." Hearing that gave me a sense of vindication, but it wasn't enough. I didn't just want to win. I wanted Sarah to understand what she'd thrown away. That evening, I started executing my plan for revenge. First, I sent a carefully worded message to Brian's wife. Oh yeah. Turns out Brian was married too. I attached the photos Tom had taken and ended the message with, "You deserve to know the truth." Next, I sent Sarah an email summarizing everything Amanda had prepared. Photos, timelines, receipts. I made it clear that if she tried to push me any further, I wouldn't hesitate to let everyone in her life know exactly what she'd done. Finally, I decided to play her game on social media. I posted a picture of myself with Matt and a few friends, captioned, "Surround yourself with people who lift you up, not drag you down." It wasn't much, but it was enough to get under her skin. Within minutes, Sarah sent me a furious text. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" The next few days were a whirlwind of chaos. My quiet life had turned into a soap opera, and Sarah was determined to drag it through the mud. She didn't just double down on her lies. She went nuclear. First, she took to social media. Sarah posted a long, rambling status about how she was the victim of a toxic, controlling marriage. She painted me as some obsessive tyrant who had ruined her confidence and forced her to seek validation elsewhere. The cherry on top? A photo of her and Brian, captioned, "Sometimes love finds you when you least expect it." The comments poured in. Her friends rallied around her, calling me names like monster and abuser. A few mutual acquaintances messaged me, asking if the rumors were true. I didn't bother replying. I wasn't going to defend myself in the court of public opinion, especially when I had bigger plans in motion. But Sarah wasn't content with just smearing me online. She started showing up unannounced at places I frequented. Once, I was grabbing coffee when she walked in, clinging to Brian's arm. She didn't say a word to me, just smiled that smug, condescending smile that made my blood boil. It was like she was daring me to react. I didn't. Instead, I took a sip of my coffee, nodded at her, and left without a word. I could tell it pissed her off, and that small victory was enough for now. A few days later, I got a message from Brian's wife, Angela. She'd seen my email and wanted to meet. We decided on a quiet park where we could talk without interruptions. Angela was calm, but clearly devastated. She showed me messages Sarah and Brian had exchanged. Texts about how boring their spouses were, how they couldn't wait to start a new life together. It made my stomach churn. I don't know what to do, Angela said, her voice breaking. We have kids. How do I tell them their dad is like this? I'm so sorry, I said, but you deserve better than him. We both do. That conversation lit a fire in Angela. A few days later, Brian was served with divorce papers. Word spread quickly at their office, and soon, Brian wasn't just dealing with a failing marriage. He was dealing with a ruined career. Apparently, the company had a strict no-fraternization policy, and once HR caught wind of his escapades, he was out the door. The PI's bombshell. Just when I thought things couldn't get any messier, Tom, my private investigator, called with more dirt. Jake, he said, you're not going to believe this. He sent me a folder of photos showing Sarah with yet another guy, this time, a coworker from Brian's office. The kicker? The photos were recent, taken during her late meetings. She wasn't even exclusive in her cheating. This is gold for your case, Amanda said when I showed her. At this rate, Sarah will walk away with nothing but the clothes on her back. That night, Sarah showed up at the house again, pounding on the door. I let her in, determined to keep my cool. What do you want, Sarah? I asked, crossing my arms. I want to talk, she said, looking genuinely upset for once. Jake, I think we made a mistake. I don't want to lose you. I almost laughed in her face. You're kidding, right? You've been parading Brian around like a trophy, and now you suddenly don't want to lose me? Tears welled up in her eyes. I was stupid, okay? I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. Save it, I said, cutting her off. You didn't realize anything. You're only here because Brian's life is falling apart, and you're too selfish to be alone. Her face twisted with anger. You're such a coward, Jake. You think hiding behind lawyers and investigators makes you better than me? No, I said calmly. What makes me better is that I don't lie, cheat, or destroy people's lives for fun. Now get out of my house. Small victories. The next morning, I sent Amanda all the new evidence. This just keeps getting better, she said. At this rate, she won't even get the dogs. Sarah, of course, continued her smear campaign, but it was losing steam. More and more people started seeing through her lies, especially after Angela shared her side of the story online. Sarah's carefully curated image was unraveling, and she couldn't stand it. One night, I got a call from Sarah's best friend, Lisa. Jake, I'm so sorry, she said. I had no idea Sarah was like this. If you need anything, let me know. It was a small comfort, but it reminded me that I wasn't alone. For every person Sarah tried to manipulate, there were others who saw the truth. As Sarah's world crumbled around her, she became more desperate and more erratic. Her once calculated manipulations started to spiral out of control. It was almost like she couldn't comprehend that her lies weren't working anymore. One evening, I was sitting in my now Sarah-free house, enjoying the peace and quiet, when my phone buzzed. It was Sarah. Jake, can we talk? Please, her text read. I'm sorry for everything. I know I messed up. I don't want this to end like this. I stared at the message for a long moment, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to ignore her, but another part wanted to see just how far she'd go. So, against my better judgment, I replied, Fine, come by tomorrow at 7. The next evening, she showed up, dressed more modestly than I'd seen her in months. Her makeup was toned down, and she carried a box of old photos, memories from when we were happy. Jake, she started, setting the box on the coffee table. I don't know how to explain how sorry I am. I was selfish and I hurt you, but I want to fix this. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. You've got a funny way of showing it. Parading Brian around, trashing me on social media, hooking up with half your office. She winced, but I kept going. Why now? Why do you suddenly care about fixing this? I made a mistake, okay? She said, her voice trembling. Brian's gone. He left me. Said I was too much drama. And now everyone at work knows what happened. I'm losing everything, Jake. I need you. There it was, the truth. Sarah didn't want me back because she loved me. She wanted me back because I was her safety net, the one person who had always cleaned up her messes. But not this time. I'm not your plan B, I said, my voice steady. You made your choices. Now you get to live with them. The next day, Sarah went full scorched earth. She posted another rant on social media, this time accusing me of ruining her life and spying on her like a creep. She claimed I'd hired a PI because I was insecure and couldn't handle a strong, independent woman. Her rant didn't land the way she expected. Instead of sympathy, the comments were filled with people calling her out. You cheated and got caught. Own it. Spying? Sounds like he just wanted proof of your lies. This is embarrassing. Stop posting. I couldn't help but smirk. Sarah had spent years cultivating an image of perfection, and now, everyone saw her for what she really was. As if things weren't messy enough, Tom, my PI, called me again. Jake, there's one more thing you should know. What now? I asked, bracing myself. I dug into Sarah's finances like you asked. Turns out, she's been funneling money out of your joint account for months, thousands of dollars. What? I felt the anger surge through me. Where did it go? Mostly hotel bills, expensive dinners, and gifts. Some of it went to Brian. She even paid for a vacation they took together. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. It wasn't just the affair. It was the blatant disrespect, the sheer audacity of stealing from me to fund her little love story. I immediately forwarded the evidence to Amanda. She was thrilled. This is the nail in the coffin, she said. Not only does this bolster your case, but we can also go after her for financial misconduct. With Amanda's guidance, I went all in. I filed for full ownership of the house, citing Sarah's infidelity and financial betrayal. I also requested that she repay the money she had siphoned from our accounts. Meanwhile, Amanda made sure Sarah's behavior, her affairs, her social media antics, her reckless spending, was front and center in our case. When Sarah was served the updated paperwork, she lost it. She showed up at my door, screaming and banging like a lunatic. I didn't even open it. Instead, I called the police. Watching her get escorted off my property was both surreal and satisfying. When our court date finally arrived, Sarah looked haggard. Gone was the confident, glamorous woman I once knew. She tried to play the victim, claiming I was vindictive and controlling. But Amanda tore her apart, presenting mountains of evidence. The photos, the financial records, the texts, the social media posts. Every lie Sarah had told unraveled in front of the judge. By the end of it, the ruling was clear. I kept the house, the majority of our assets, and even the dogs. Sarah was left with little more than her shattered reputation and a stack of bills to pay. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and a newfound sense of freedom. For years, I'd built my life around Sarah, only to realize she'd been tearing it apart behind my back. But now, I was free to rebuild, to focus on myself and the people who actually cared about me. Sarah, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. Word of her affairs had spread like wildfire, and her professional and social circles had all but abandoned her. Last I heard, she was couch surfing and trying to land a job in another city. After the court proceedings were over, my life felt strangely quiet. The whirlwind of betrayal, confrontation, and revenge had finally calmed, leaving me with a house that felt both empty and liberating. For the first time in years, I didn't have to tiptoe around someone else's chaos. It was just me, my dogs, and the beginning of a new chapter. One evening, I got a call from an unknown number. At first, I thought it might be Sarah, trying to worm her way back into my life. But when I picked up, the voice on the other end surprised me. "Jake? It's Angela, Brian's wife." "Hey," I said, sitting up. "How are you holding up?" She sighed. "Better now that the divorce is moving forward. But, I thought you should know something." My stomach sank. "What is it?" It turns out Sarah wasn't just cheating with Brian. She was also messaging my brother. I blinked, trying to process what she just said. "Your brother?" "Yeah. He told me he cut it off after a couple of weeks because she was acting crazy, but I thought you should know." I sat there, stunned. Sarah's trail of destruction seemed to have no end. She wasn't just reckless. She was pathological. "Thanks for letting me know," I said finally. "I don't even know what to say." Angela chuckled dryly. "Welcome to the club." With Sarah officially out of my life, I turned my focus inward. I started therapy, not just to process the betrayal, but to understand why I hadn't seen the signs sooner. My therapist, Dr. Monroe, helped me realize that I'd been so focused on making Sarah happy that I'd ignored my own needs and instincts. "You can't control someone else's behavior," she told me during one session, "but you can control how you respond to it. The fact that you stood up for yourself says a lot about your strength." Hearing that felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. For so long, I'd blamed myself for not being enough, for not seeing the cracks in our marriage sooner. But now, I realized that no amount of effort on my part could have stopped Sarah from self-destructing. Speaking of destruction, Brian wasn't faring much better. I heard through Angela that his divorce had turned into a legal nightmare. Not only had she taken him for everything he was worth, but his former employer was suing him for breach of contract over his office affair. It was poetic justice, in a way. The man who had helped wreck my marriage was now watching his own life crumble. I thought I'd seen the last of Sarah, but of course, she wasn't done. One night, I got a drunken voicemail from her. She was sobbing, slurring her words, and begging me to take her back. "Jake, I know I messed up, okay? But I love you. I always have. Brian was a mistake. They were all mistakes. Please, just give me another chance." I didn't reply. I didn't even listen to the whole message. I deleted it and blocked her number. Sarah had already taken enough of my time, energy, and heart. I wasn't going to give her any more. The months that followed were some of the most peaceful of my life. I renovated the house, turning it into a space that felt like mine. I reconnected with friends I drifted away from during my marriage, and I even started dating again. Not seriously, but enough to remind myself that not all relationships are doomed to fail. One afternoon, as I was walking my dogs in the park, I bumped into Angela. She looked lighter, happier, and for the first time, we laughed about the mess we'd both endured. "Here's to starting over," she said, raising an imaginary toast. "Here's to starting over," I agreed. Looking back, I realized that Sarah's betrayal, as painful as it was, set me free. It forced me to confront my own blind spots and prioritize my happiness for the first time in years. I learned that love isn't about sacrificing yourself for someone else. It's about finding someone who values and respects you as an equal. To anyone reading this who's going through something similar, trust your gut, stand up for yourself, and don't be afraid to walk away from someone who doesn't value you. Life is too short to spend it with someone who takes more than they give. As for Sarah, I don't know where she is now, and honestly, I don't care. She's part of my past, a lesson learned, but not a wound I carry anymore. I'm Jake, and I'm finally free. With Sarah completely out of my life, I felt like I was breathing fresh air for the first time in years. I started taking time to reflect on what I really wanted, what made me happy. For years, my life revolved around making Sarah happy, putting her needs first, and ignoring my own instincts. Now, it was my turn to rebuild. I started small, cooking meals I enjoyed, decorating the house in a way that felt like me, and rediscovering old hobbies. I hadn't touched my guitar in years, but now, I spent hours strumming on the back porch, my dogs lounging at my feet. For the first time in a long time, my house felt like a home, not just a place I shared with someone who barely appreciated me. I also started running again. It had been something I loved in college, but I'd let it fall by the wayside. At first, it was tough. Every step felt like a battle, but it became my therapy. Running gave me a sense of control and clarity, and with each mile, I felt a little stronger. One weekend, I attended a small barbecue hosted by Matt. I wasn't expecting much, just burgers, beers, and some laughs. But as the evening went on, I found myself talking to a woman named Claire, a friend of Matt's girlfriend. Claire was warm, funny, and easy to talk to. She wasn't flashy like Sarah, or trying to be the center of attention. Instead, she had this quiet confidence that drew me in. We ended up talking for hours, sharing stories about our lives and laughing over stupid jokes. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a genuine connection. When the barbecue ended, Claire gave me her number. "Text me if you ever want to grab coffee," she said with a smile. I hesitated at first. The idea of starting something new after everything I'd been through was daunting. But something about Claire felt different, safe, even. So, a few days later, I took a chance and sent her a text. Over the next few weeks, Claire and I started seeing each other casually. We kept things light, coffee dates, long walks, and hours of conversation. She knew about my past, and instead of judging me, she listened with compassion. "I'm not looking to rush into anything," I told her one evening as we sat on a park bench, watching the sunset. "I've been through a lot." She nodded. "I get it. Let's just take it one day at a time." It was refreshing to be with someone who didn't pressure me, who didn't try to control me or manipulate my emotions. For the first time, I felt like I was building something healthy, something real. Just as I was settling into my new life, Sarah made one final attempt to drag me back into her drama. I got an email from her out of the blue. It was long, rambling, and full of contradictions. She started with an apology, claiming she'd found God and realized the error of her ways. Then, she switched gears, blaming me for her behavior, saying I'd pushed her away by being too focused on work and not enough on her. Finally, she ended with a plea for another chance, saying she still loved me and wanted to fix things. I didn't reply. I forwarded the email to Amanda, just in case Sarah tried to pull any legal stunts, and then I deleted it. Whatever Sarah thought she could accomplish by reaching out, it wasn't going to work. I was done letting her control my life. As the months passed, my connection with Claire deepened. She wasn't just kind and understanding. She challenged me in ways that made me a better person. She encouraged me to pursue my passions, to speak my mind, and to let go of the anger I still carried towards Sarah. "You don't have to let her win," Claire said one evening as we walked along the beach. "But you also don't have to let her keep taking up space in your head. She's not worth it." She was right. Sarah had taken enough from me, my time, my trust, my happiness. It was time to let go of the past and focus on the future. Looking back, I can't believe how far I've come. Sarah's betrayal broke me in ways I never thought possible, but it also forced me to rebuild myself from the ground up. I'm stronger now, wiser, and more in tune with what I deserve in life. Claire and I aren't rushing things, but I can see a future with her, a future built on trust, respect, and love. For the first time in years, I'm excited about what's to come. To anyone reading this who's dealing with betrayal, you can get through it. It's not easy, and it's not quick, but you'll come out the other side stronger than you ever thought possible. Don't let someone else's mistakes define you. Take back your power and start living for yourself. Months passed, and life settled into a peaceful rhythm. My connection with Claire grew deeper, my career was thriving, and I finally felt free from the shadow Sarah had cast over my life. I was moving forward, but just when I thought I'd closed the door on that chapter for good, Sarah came crashing back in, like a storm I hadn't seen coming. It was a Saturday morning, and I was tinkering with my car in the garage when I heard a knock at the front door. My dogs barked, running to the door with more excitement than they should have had for uninvited company. When I opened the door, I froze. It was Sarah. She looked different. Her once polished, confident exterior was gone, replaced by someone who looked tired and disheveled. Her hair was unkempt, and her makeup, if there was any, was smudged. She was holding a small suitcase. "Jake," she said, her voice trembling. "Can we talk?" I stared at her, every fiber of my being screaming to slam the door in her face. But curiosity got the better of me. I stepped aside, letting her in. She walked in hesitantly, looking around like she was stepping into a stranger's home, which, in a way, she was. "What do you want, Sarah?" I asked, keeping my tone cold. She sat on the edge of the couch, clutching her suitcase like it was a lifeline. "I know I'm the last person you want to see," she started, "but I didn't know where else to go." I folded my arms. "That's not my problem. You burned every bridge you had, Sarah. Why are you here?" She broke down, sobbing into her hands. "Jake, I've lost everything. Brian's gone. My job's gone. My family won't even talk to me. I'm homeless." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, not because I felt sorry for her, but because it was so clear that this wasn't about remorse. It was about desperation. She wasn't here because she cared about me. She was here because she had nowhere else to turn. "Why should I care?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "After everything you did, why do you think I owe you anything?" She looked up, her face streaked with tears. "Because I know I was wrong. I know I hurt you, and I hate myself for it. I don't have anyone else." Her words might have softened me once, but not anymore. I'd spent too much time rebuilding myself to let her tear me down again. "You made your choices, Sarah," I said, my tone firm, "and now you're living with the consequences. I've moved on. You should too." She stared at me for a long moment, her face a mix of disbelief and sorrow. "I thought you'd still care," she whispered. "I cared once," I admitted, "but that part of me is gone." After Sarah left, I told Claire about the encounter. She listened patiently, her face calm but thoughtful. "She's drowning, Jake," Claire said, "but you're not her lifeboat. Don't let her guilt you into thinking you are." "I'm not," I assured her. "I've given her enough of my life already." Claire smiled, squeezing my hand. "Good, because you deserve better." Around the same time Sarah resurfaced, I got an unexpected call from Amanda, my lawyer. She'd heard about a job opening at a nonprofit organization that aligned perfectly with my skills and passions. It was a role that involved working with people recovering from financial and emotional abuse, helping them rebuild their lives. "It's like you're made for this," Amanda said. "You've lived it. You know what it's like to pick up the pieces." I hesitated at first. Was I ready to turn my personal experience into something bigger? But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Helping others find their strength felt like the perfect way to close this chapter of my life. Taking the job was one of the best decisions I've ever made. Every day, I met people who were struggling, just like I had been. And every day, I helped them find their footing, their confidence, their power. It was more fulfilling than I ever imagined. As for Sarah, I never saw her again. Last I heard, she'd moved out of state, trying to start over somewhere new. I wish I could say I felt something about it. Relief, pity, even anger. But the truth is, I didn't. She was a ghost now, a part of my past that no longer haunted me. Claire and I continued to grow closer, but we took things at our own pace. There were no grand declarations, no rushing into commitments, just two people enjoying each other's company and building something real. For the first time in years, I felt happy. Not the fragile, surface-level happiness I'd once had with Sarah, but a deep, steady contentment. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that betrayal doesn't have to define you. It can break you, yes, but it can also teach you how strong you are. It can push you to let go of what's toxic and embrace what's good. To anyone out there who's been where I was, know that it gets better. You'll find your peace, your strength, your happiness. And when you do, you'll look back and realize that losing the person who hurt you was the best thing that ever happened. Life was finally steady, peaceful, and, dare I say it, happy. My new job at the nonprofit gave me a purpose I hadn't felt in years, and Claire continued to be a steady, positive presence in my life. Every day felt like a step further from the chaos Sarah had brought into my world. But life, as I was learning, has a way of surprising you. This time, in a good way. The nonprofit role was more than just a job, it was a calling. I worked closely with people who had been through their own storms, abusive relationships, financial manipulation, and betrayal. Every story I heard reminded me of my own journey, and every success I witnessed made me feel like I was truly making a difference. One day, I was asked to give a presentation at a local community center about overcoming betrayal and rebuilding self-worth. Public speaking wasn't my strong suit, but I knew my story could help others. Claire encouraged me to do it. "You've lived it, Jake," she said. "People need to hear from someone who's come out the other side." So I did. Standing in front of a room full of strangers, I shared my experience, the pain, the anger, the rebuilding. I didn't sugarcoat anything, but I also focused on the hope that comes after the storm. When I finished, the room erupted into applause. People approached me afterward, thanking me for my honesty and courage. It was humbling and deeply fulfilling. A few weeks later, Claire invited me to dinner at her place. She'd been acting a little secretive, but I didn't think much of it. When I arrived, she greeted me with a warm smile and led me to the dining table, where she prepared an amazing meal. As we ate, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "I've been working on something," she said, sliding it across the table to me. I opened the envelope to find a series of photos, concept designs for a community center focused on recovery and growth. "It's a project I've been pitching to investors," she explained. "A space where people can get therapy, financial counseling, and resources to rebuild their lives. And I want you to help me lead it." I was stunned. "Claire, this is incredible. But are you sure?" She nodded. "You're already doing this work, Jake. You've been through it, and you're helping people every day. This could be the next step, not just for you, but for everyone you're trying to help." I didn't need much convincing. The opportunity to create something tangible, something lasting, was too good to pass up. We spent the next few months working on the project together, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was building something truly meaningful. As the community center project gained traction, I started seeing the ripple effect of what Claire and I were creating. People from all walks of life, single parents, survivors of toxic relationships, and those just looking for guidance, found support and a sense of belonging in what we built. The center became a symbol of resilience, a place where people could turn pain into power. And in many ways, it became a reflection of my own journey. One evening, as Claire and I were walking through the nearly completed center, she stopped me near the main entrance. "You know," she said, her voice soft, "this place wouldn't exist without you." I shook my head. "It's your vision, Claire. I'm just lucky to be a part of it." She smiled, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small keychain. Attached to it was a key engraved with the word hope. "It's for you," she said, "because you didn't just rebuild your life, you're helping others rebuild theirs." I was speechless. For the first time, I truly felt like I'd turned my pain into something positive, something lasting. And as I looked at Claire, I realized just how much she'd come to mean to me. The opening day of the center was a huge success. People from all over the community came to see what we'd built, and the feedback was overwhelming. As I stood on the stage, addressing the crowd, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not just for the center, but for the journey that had led me here. After the event, Claire and I shared a quiet moment together. "So," she said, leaning against the railing, "what's next for you, Jake?" I thought about it for a moment. "I think I'm finally where I'm supposed to be." She smiled. "Me too. If you told me a year ago that I'd be here, happy, fulfilled, and surrounded by people who truly cared, I wouldn't have believed you. Back then, I was drowning in betrayal and heartbreak, convinced that my life would never be the same. But life does go on, and if you're willing to fight for it, it can get better than you ever imagined." To anyone reading this who's going through their own storm, don't give up. The pain won't last forever, and one day, You'll look back and see that it was the catalyst for something greater. You'll grow, you'll heal, and you'll find a life that's worth living.